Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive with us. And today we're tackling Poetry Slam.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. I think this is going to be a really unique deep dive because we're looking at it kind of through the back door.
Yes.
Yeah.
Through a side window, perhaps.
Yeah, through a side window. We're looking at a blog post from Stefan Pinkwart, who is a very prominent figure in the German Poetry Slam scene.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of giving us a list of here's the 5 things you got to do to write a good slam poem,
Right.
he basically is just hit me with your poetry slam questions.
Yeah, I love that approach. So unusual, but it's really effective.
And what I think is so interesting is he starts out with these questions that people have written to him, and they're very humorous.
Yes.
Is it too cheesy to write a poem about pizza?
Exactly. That's one of them.
Yeah, so it's So you wouldn't think that when you're dealing with poetry that you're going to get this really playful and almost silly tone. But it really draws you in, and I think one of the things that it does is it kind of breaks down this wall that people might have around poetry.
Yes.
Especially slam poetry,
Yeah.
which has this reputation for being very raw and intense.
Absolutely. And he addresses that too. He has this really interesting, he compares a slamming heart to a rock concert drum.
Oh, yeah.
So again, that intensity, but it's not meant to be intimidating.
Right.
He's really just trying to emphasize the power and the vulnerability.
Yeah, you can't have one without the other.
Exactly.
And, I think it's interesting, too, because he doesn't shy away from that sort of very emotional side of it, but then he kind of turns it around on us.
Yes.
And he's like, okay, now it's your turn to ask the questions.
Exactly.
And so you kind of think, well, wait a minute. Shouldn't he, as the poet, as the one with the experience, be giving us all the answers?
Right. And it's really interesting because I think he's suggesting that maybe the most compelling slam poetry comes from embracing that uncertainty, from seeking out different perspectives and actively engaging in these questions.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what I was getting at before, is that very playful tone that he uses in the blog post. I think there's a really clever connection between that and him asking for all of these questions.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's okay, this is a space where you can ask the silly questions.
Yes.
You can ask the obvious questions. And actually, those often can lead to some of the most, aha moments.
Exactly. And it's also important to remember that this is a live performance with an audience. They're feeding right into it, their energy.
Yeah, it's a very interactive art form.
Exactly. So knowing what clicks with them, what makes them laugh, makes them think, makes them feel something, that's crucial for the slam poet.
That's so true. Towards the end of this post, he says, just write back to me. Those who ask, win.
Yeah, I love that line.
And I think that it's interesting because it's not just a call to action. It's almost like a challenge.
Yeah.
Like he's saying, if you really want to get good at this, you have to be willing to put yourself out there.
Yes. Push past those doubts, push past the insecurities, because sometimes finding your voice, finding your message starts with figuring out what you don't know.
Yeah, what you're struggling with.
Exactly.
And it's almost to me, I read it as embrace the messiness of it all.
Right. Don't be afraid of mistakes or asking something obvious.
Yeah, because I think, too, and it ties back to the whole poetry slam thing, it's all about authenticity.
Yes.
You're connecting with the audience.
And being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And you're saying, hey, this is me. I'm human.
Yeah. I have questions, too.
Exactly.
So, if that's the case for the performer, what about the audience, right?
Yeah.
What questions do they bring to these slam poetry events? Unspoken questions.
Right.
How can a slam poet tap into that?
Yes.
To create something really powerful?
That is the question.
That is the question, indeed. Well, food for thought for all of you. Mit poetischen Grüßen, Stefan vom Bahn-Slam-Kanal.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Tschüss.